Hi, everybody, and welcome to Heart of the Earth. I'm Angela Hart. For the first half hour, I'll be introducing you to Neal Segal. He's a health insurance benefit consultant, and he's going to speak about Medicare and the exchanges and what's involved with Obamacare. So we hope you'll enjoy the show. And now I'd like to welcome my first guest, Neal Segal. Welcome, Neal.
Thank you, Angela. Thanks for having me on your program.
I'm so glad you're here. Everybody is very concerned these days about Obamacare. We talk about it all the time. Everybody talks about insurance premiums and health benefits, and the costs are going up, and what's involved with the law and the tax issues. There's also fines involved if you don't have health insurance. And so I've invited Neal here to talk about that, as well as the Medicare maze. It's so confusing. Many of us are at that age now where we're about to go on to Medicare, not me, of course, but many of the viewers are. And also we have parents, some of us have loved ones that may be even disabled and are qualifying for Medicare now. So Neal is going to explain all this to us. So first, Neal, what is the name, where are you working? You work in New Jersey and Staten Island?
I work primarily in New York and New Jersey. I've been in the industry for over 15 years with various carriers and also on the consulting side.
So you actually represent a bunch of insurance companies in terms of if somebody had a question about a policy with a health insurance policy.
Yes, I represent all the carriers, all the major carriers that are out there. We represent the bigger ones, the smaller ones. We basically work for the individual or the client. We don't work for the insurance companies.
So tell us, what's going on with Obamacare? What do we need to know first off as individuals who are employed, or even so those who are not employed or self-employed? Can you address those issues?
That's a great question. I think that a lot of people tend to get confused with what to do with their health insurance on an annual basis. For the individual sole proprietors that are in the marketplace, especially it's very difficult for them because they can't get company or group health insurance. They have to go on an individual plan if they want to be insured. So we recommend that they definitely look at the Obamacare coverages that are out there through the exchanges and definitely attain coverage for 2016. Open enrollment is coming up, and this is the time for them to start looking around.
When you say open enrollment is coming up, for the average person, why can't they just get it anytime on the exchange? And what is the exchange? What does this all mean?
That's also a great question. Open enrollment is basically the time of the year that somebody can decide to enroll on health insurance or not decide to enroll on health insurance. That's entirely up to them. If they don't enroll, as you stated before, then there will be certain fines that they'll have. So at this point in time, open enrollment for the Obamacare begins in November 1st and will last through February 28th.
But why do they have to wait till November 1st? I mean, here, when we're filming this, we're in October. And if an individual wanted to go right now, they couldn't get on one of the exchange plans?
The reason that they can't get on right now is if they don't have a qualifying event in order to get onto these plans, then they're not allowed to enroll. And the reason for that is because they missed their open enrollment window for when open enrollment was for 2015.
Oh, and what is a qualifying event as an example?
A qualifying event might be a loss of group coverage through your employer, so if you lose your job. It might be if you had a divorce and now you don't have insurance because of that divorce, through the spouse. If a newborn baby is born, that's a qualifying event. So there are certain life-changing activities throughout the course of the year that would qualify as that event, which would allow you to come onto that coverage.
But what if somebody, for the first half of the year as an example, for 2015, what if the person couldn't afford to get insurance and so they never signed up? Well, first of all, how much are the premiums on these exchanges that they call them?
The premiums vary from carrier to carrier, but what you'll find is that there are 4 metal levels that they're allowed to choose from bronze through platinum. So there's bronze, silver, gold, and platinum.
Okay.
And through these plans, they're able to choose the premium levels that they want to enroll on.
Well, what would be the least expensive as an example?
Bronze plans would be the least expensive, but that's also going to give you the highest out-of-pocket costs with the higher deductibles. Those plans are for individuals who might not be sick or can't afford to go on to a better plan than that.
And how much would they cost approximately?
It varies per carrier. The
300,
ranges
500?
are usually about mid 300s to about low 400s.
That would be the low end. And what would
Right.
the high end be if they went with the platinum as an example?
The high ends could be anywhere between mid 500s all the way up to $850, $900.
For a single person?
Yes, for one person.
Wow, that can be very expensive.
It could be. It depends on the carrier, and it depends on what the individual is looking for. The larger carriers tend to be a lot more expensive than the regional carriers.
Okay. And what are the typical deductibles in these plans?
For a bronze plan, the deductibles tend to be around $6,350 for a single person.
Wow.
And for a platinum plan, typically there are no deductibles.
Oh, no wonder they're in the $800, $2,000 a month, of course. Now, do you find that a lot of people are not signed up presently that give you a call and ask you about the health insurance, that there's some that are still uncovered?
You would be surprised. The number of uninsured people, especially in the state of New York, is at an all-time high. I think a lot of people don't realize that if they don't sign up for that health coverage, they are going to receive a penalty when they file their taxes for whichever calendar year that you're in. So the first question your accountant is going to ask you when you file your taxes is whether or not you have health insurance. And if you don't,
and they're obligated to ask you that, the accountants.
the
now.
accountant is definitely obligated to ask you that question. And if you don't have health coverage at that point in time, they're going to tell you you're going to receive a fine for that calendar year.
Wow. Wow. So what do you suggest people do? I suppose they have to start researching this now?
I would suggest right away that people start researching it. The best thing to do is not for the individual to go themselves to a carrier. And the reason for that is because when you call up that particular carrier, you're only getting that carrier's viewpoint of their products and services. It's much better if you decide to enroll with health insurance to obtain a broker. And the reason for this is there's no extra fees for you. They're not going to charge you anything above and beyond, and they'll be able to quote every carrier out there for you and tell you the ins and outs of the carriers. That's right. Like I said before, they're not working for the carriers; they're working on your behalf.
Well, that's interesting. Full disclosure, my husband and I were licensed health and life insurance brokers for, I think, about 20 years. In fact, just recently we stopped being licensed in that area. Actually, when the exchanges came out and the HIPAA law changed, we decided to focus our energies in other areas. So I respect the fact that you're so knowledgeable about all these products, because there's so much more to know now because of the different nuances of the products. And this exchange business is very hard. People go on the internet, and there's just too many choices. It's just too confusing to do on their own.
Absolutely. You should definitely leave it to the professionals and let them work for you.
And it doesn't cost them money.
It's not going to cost them any money.
The premium's no higher. There's no hidden fees or anything like that.
There's no hidden fees. Now, brokers are allowed to charge consulting fees if they want to. My recommendation is not to go with those particular producers.
Totally
I think so.
agree with that. Was there anything else about Obamacare that you think would be interesting for the viewers to learn about that the average person might not be aware of?
Yes, absolutely. Before you sign up with any kind of health insurance, the first thing you should definitely do is check the networks with that particular carrier. And the reason for that is if you're signing up and paying, let's say, $500 or $600 for insurance, you don't want to enroll with a carrier where none of your providers take that insurance.
Very important to make sure your doctors and your children's doctors and your husband's doctors or wife's doctors,
Absolutely.
wife's doctors are on the plan.
Absolutely. And if you're uncomfortable giving that information out, you can certainly go to the websites that are available through the carriers and check the networks yourself, or your broker can definitely do that for you if you decide to go that route.
Wow, that's important then, because otherwise you're with a carrier that's not any good to you because you can't go to your doctors that you're accustomed to going to.
Exactly. Then you have to switch providers, and most people really don't want to switch providers. They would rather they would rather switch dentists than they would medical providers.
Sure. There's a longer history, I suppose, and much
Absolutely.
more intricacies involved. Now, are the laws the same in Jersey and New York with respect to the exchanges and the penalties and things of that nature?
Well, that's also a really great question. In New York, the exchanges are state-run, which means that you're enrolling through exchanges operated by the state of New York. When you're in New Jersey, you're actually going through the federal marketplace. And
why is that? How did that come about? Gosh.
Well, what happened there was it's more how the state's governor wants the exchanges to be operated. And in New York, they decided to run it through the state, and in New Jersey, they decided to run it through the federal government.
I'm shocked that Christie went along with that. I am shocked. Wouldn't you think he'd prefer to control it more?
No, because if he controls it more, then that's then the state has to assume more responsibility for the exchanges. This way, the federal government has to do more of the legwork than the individual states.
The administration, you mean, as well as the accountability?
The accountability, absolutely.
Now, what if a covered enrollee in the exchange has an issue with a claim not getting paid? What is the recourse?
What would happen is if a claim is not being paid by the carrier, this is exactly why you would have a broker work for your behalf. The broker can then call the carrier and have the carrier explain to them why the claim is not being covered, and hopefully the broker can work with the carrier to help resolve that claim issue for you.
And I can tell you that brokers have a lot more success getting claims paid than an individual does.
They definitely know the ins and outs of the carrier, where to go, who to call, who to email, and it's a lot easier than you calling up customer service, spending some time on hold.
Sometime? Hours on hold.
Could be hours on hold. It's just a lot easier calling your broker, letting them work for you. Just remember, be patient. I'm sure that that individual will get the job done for you.
You know, I used to write letters to the state when the carrier wouldn't take care of my client when we were in that business, because I couldn't stand the insurance companies not paying the claims. And the enrollee would be on the phone for hours, right, and fighting, you know, a $100 or $200 claim, or it could be a $50,000 claim. In one case, it was a very large claim. And so I used to write letters to the state commissioners and people on that level and CC the insurance company and say that they're not paying the claim, and appeal it and appeal it and appeal it. And I'm sure that you help in a similar manner with the clients. Are these HMOs,
Absolutely.
these exchanges, or are they able to go out of network? How do they work?
There are no out-of-network plans on the exchanges currently. So if you wanted to choose a plan that has out-of-network, then the exchange is definitely not a place for you to enroll.
Oh, so you mean people can also go directly to you to go to a carrier directly and not be on this so-called exchange?
We can definitely go through the carrier on a direct basis as well. The advantage of going directly through the carrier with the broker is that there are plans offered off the exchange directly through the carrier that are not available on the exchanges.
So this term exchanges covers what exactly?
The exchange is a marketplace. So what you're doing is you're looking at all the carriers, you're seeing the spectrum that's out there, the spectrum of plans, and you're choosing a plan that best fits you.
That's for the exchanges.
Right. So you're going shopping. You're shopping for insurance.
But how does that differ then if someone calls you and you might recommend going to a non-exchange plan? This is an individual who doesn't have it at work, a group plan. So how does that differ? Again, you said there's different plans that you can go to direct that are not called, they're just not designated as exchange plans? I mean, is it that simple?
Well, when you go on the exchange, there's something you can receive if you qualify for it called a federal subsidy. And when you get a federal subsidy, what that means is it helps you pay for your health insurance plan. So that's only available through the exchanges. Now, there are qualifying factors in order to receive those subsidies. So if you make over a certain amount of money, I believe it's $47,000 a year, then you won't qualify for a federal subsidy. And the closer you are to making $47,000, the less amount of a subsidy you'll receive.
Is that per household or per individual?
If you're single, it's I believe it's $47,000. If you're married, I believe it's $75,000.
Interesting. Well,
Right.
I don't know. How did you get into the insurance business?
I was actually recruited out of college to come into the insurance business.
Wow. And what did you major in college?
Psychology.
No kidding. Interesting. And they recruited you, so you are so knowledgeable about this
Thank
stuff.
you.
Was there anything else before we get to the Medicare maze, as I like to call it, that you would like to share about the exchanges and health insurance and things to be concerned about or not to be? What about pre-existing conditions?
Pre-existing conditions no longer apply. According to the law, the Affordable Care Act that came into effect. So anybody with a pre-existing condition that enrolls on a health insurance plan does not have to worry about that condition not being covered.
As long as they've been covered, though, right? Is there a
No.
certain... So let's say somebody hasn't been covered all through 2015,
Mm-hmm.
and they decided to get covered now. What'd you say the enrollment ends when or starts
Open
when?
enrollment ends February 28th,
When does it start?
November 1st.
So that's for the health insurance exchange,
Mm-hmm.
or any insurance. They just have to be covered. Is that the rule?
That's for individual coverage.
Okay.
As a last frame of reference, start early. Start your looking early. As I said, try and acquire a broker to help you search for your health insurance. The earlier you enroll, the better it'll be for you, because you can be relaxed knowing that you'll have coverage secured for 2016.
And they won't be getting a fine. But
Right.
getting back to my pre-existing question, so let's say somebody didn't have insurance all this time, since January, and now they're enrolling, and they have a pre-existing condition, it will still be covered?
Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful news.
All pre-existing conditions are covered, and that's per federal law.
Regardless of whether they've had insurance before,
Regardless
ever.
of whether or not they've had insurance. That's right. So the carrier can no longer deny an individual for any type of condition that they've had in the past.
Well, is this due to Obama regulations?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Obama, I forgive you for all that you're not supporting Israel and for all of the angst that you're causing us, and your support of ISIS as far as I'm concerned. I forgive you because you're helping people not having to worry about their pre-existing conditions. So having said that, you didn't know I was going to make that stand, I'm sure, in front of the camera, but I feel so strongly about it. Tell us now about the Medicare maze. Many of us are getting at that age, or we have family members, and we don't know where to start. What would you suggest the person do? And what age does it kick in? What are the qualifiers? How does it work?
Normally, Medicare begins at the age of 65. And what most people don't know is if they don't receive Part A in the mail, they do have to go down to Social Security and obtain Part A for themselves.
1 second. What is Part A? I was trying
That's a
to help my
great
in-laws
question.
with this, and it was driving me crazy.
Okay, so original Medicare is operated by the federal government. You receive Part A and Part B from the federal government. Part A, most individuals receive for free. Part B comes with a monthly premium attached to it.
And what does Part B cover?
Part B covers physicians and outpatient services.
And Part A is hospital, you said?
Part A is hospitalization.
So the government subsidizes it. Is that true, or is it our Social Security that's paying for the Medicare?
The government subsidizes the cost for Medicare, and your Social Security helps you pay for your portion of Part B premium.
Okay, so for Part A, for hospitalization, that everybody automatically has that when they turn 65. Do I understand that correctly?
No, you do have to qualify for Part A. So
Oh.
what that means is you have to work a certain number of quarters in order to qualify for Part A.
Oh,
I believe it's 10 years or 40 quarters.
interesting.
And then when you qualify for Part A, then you're entitled to enroll on that particular plan. If you have not met those qualifications and you're over the age of 65, there could be a premium attached to Part A.
Yikes.
Yes, so it could be a little bit confusing.
And this is what people like you help people like us figure out.
That's right.
Okay, and so that's Part A, hospitalization. Part B covers the doctors, the labs, and things of that
The
nature?
doctors, anything outpatient surgery, laboratories and such. It does not, however, cover prescriptions.
Uh-oh, and that takes us to Part what?
Well, before
All
we
these
get into
parts.
prescriptions, what everybody should understand is that original Medicare does not pay for everything. There are deductibles associated with original Medicare. So for the common person that doesn't understand this, that means that you're responsible for a portion of your bills before Medicare kicks in.
Like how much? That's not the donut hole, is it?
That is not the donut hole. That has to deal with prescription. Typically, the amount of money I believe is I think it's $148 that they're
Per year?
responsible. Yes,
Well, that's not too bad.
is
Although
not
for
too bad.
people on fixed income, it could hurt.
it could hurt a lot.
But at least it's not in the thousands like the so-called donut hole, which we'll talk about if
That's
it's even
right.
up there. So right away, there's a deductible.
That's right.
And what else do we need to know?
No, as I said before, it doesn't cover prescription, but some things that people can attain out there in addition to original Medicare are Medicare Advantage plans or Medicare supplemental plans, also known as Medigap insurance.
What does that mean in layman's terms?
So there are certain private insurance companies that will allow you to enroll on a Medicare Advantage plan, which typically are plans that have low cost premium or lower cost premium, but they also have networks associated with these plans. So if you enroll with those plans, typically they are HMO plans where you do have to stay in their network. Some carriers do offer Medicare Advantage PPO plans, but then you'll be paying a higher premium for those particular plans and products.
What do most people who come to you choose?
It depends on their income. For the lower income individuals, they tend to go more towards the Medicare Advantage plans.
And what would that what's considered low in that case?
I would say individuals, seniors who are more on a fixed income and really can't afford to go out of their budgets.
Okay.
So it really varies per person and what their individual budgets are.
What their expenses are and,
That's right.
and overhead. Okay.
That's right. Typically, the wealthier individuals tend to go on the Medicare supplement plans.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what those do is those will cover the gaps that original Medicare does not pick up.
Such as what? What are in these gaps?
Well, it'll pick up the deductible that Medicare Part B doesn't cover. Some of the Medicare plans will give you lower copays or no copays at all, and they'll pay for everything soup to nuts. It really depends on how much you want to spend on a Medicare supplement plan. They range in value from being very nominal to being a couple $100
Per month?
per month. Yes.
Oh, and nominal would be $50?
About $80 to $100 a month.
80 to 100. But again, for seniors who are on fixed income, low fixed incomes, that could be troublesome.
That's right. So more often than not, the lower income seniors who are on fixed budgets will tend to go more towards the Medicare Advantage programs.
So how do they enroll in this? Someone's 64, just turned 64 and 3/4 this month, and they're going to hit that. They're going to hit that 65. What do they do? Where do they start?
By the time someone hits the age of 64, they're going to receive an enormous amount of mail from every single
Really?
Medicare carrier that's in the marketplace.
Really?
Yes, and they're not going to know. They're not going to know what to do. The reason for that is it just gets really confusing as to what carrier they should select and who they should go with. So again, my recommendation is to go with a broker who is more experienced and is able to navigate the Medicare system for you.
Listen, I have a friend who is an attorney, and she used to negotiate contracts this thick overseas for JCPenney, international negotiator of contracts, huge IPOs, they used to call that in the Finance Times. Very intelligent, very educated, very knowledgeable about contracts and language. And this woman had a nervous breakdown every time Medicare enrollment came. She totally confused, totally overwhelmed. So I could imagine what it does to the average person who's not used to reading all this documentation.
That's right, especially when you're over the age of 65. Honestly, the last thing you want to be doing is sifting through Medicare guides and brochures and deciding which one to enroll on. And Medicare is very confusing in itself. There's a lot of moving parts. And the typical person is not going to understand all the language that's involved.
Yes, as I said, my friend who's this very sophisticated, knowledgeable attorney had a problem understanding the language and all the fine print, especially, not just the context and the content, but the fine print itself was overwhelming.
That's right. It tends to be very confusing to the average person out there. That's why you have those brokers who are the professionals who can definitely help you navigate through the system and help you select a plan.
Now, another topic that comes up are MSA, medical savings account plans. How can you explain those to the average person such as myself to understand how they work? Are they for employed or unemployed or semi-employed? How does it tie in?
Well, the medical savings account plans are plans that have higher deductibles but also have an account that's associated with these plans. So I would say that for the healthier individuals who are over the age of 65 who want to enroll on one of these medical savings accounts plans, that would be a good place for them to go.
Really?
Because it would allow them to bank some money away for a rainy day. So if they ever do get sick and need that money, they can definitely use it for their medical expenses.
You're saying for someone over 65 or under?
Over.
No kidding.
Right.
But, I mean, how does it, you say it's tied to an account. Logistically, what happens? Is it for an employed person or unemployed or retired?
It could be for either or.
Okay.
I would typically say that for people who are employed, it's probably a better deal for them because they have that income that's available where they can put it away.
Is it tax deferred?
It is tax deferred until they decide to retire.
Interesting. So how does it work? I mean, logistically, can you speak to it, or is it a different conversation?
It's a different conversation, and the Medicare savings account plans really are not. They're not available in this marketplace. So.
Oh, okay. But they're available. Medical savings accounts are available through other means other than Medicare. But we're talking about Medicare. PFFS. What is that?
PFFS are certain PPO plans that are available in the marketplace that have a little more extensive networks that individuals are able to use.
So it must be a little more expensive.
It is a little more expensive, and again, those are not available in all the marketplaces.
Interesting. What about dental care? What happens when people hit 65 and they're on Medicare? Do they get dental benefits?
Sometimes the Medicare plans come with preventative dental benefits. It depends on the Medicare carrier. It depends on the plan that you're going with.
Probably the more expensive ones?
Not necessarily. But if there are individuals that that need extensive dental work, I would definitely suggest enrolling on an individual dental plan. The premiums tend to run pretty low. I'd say like $50, $60 a month.
What do they cover, these dental plans? Years back they weren't that good, but I hear they're getting a little better for the
They're actually
insured.
not bad. It depends what kind of a dental plan you enroll on, but some will cover everything that's out there. Some will give you limits. It depends on what kind of plan you want. It depends how extensive you want the network to be.
You mean there's some dental plans now that cover everything you have done?
Sure.
Even implants?
Implants typically are not covered under any
But
dental plans.
the basic dental work,
Basic dental work, preventative dental work, any kind of root canals are generally covered, crowns, bridges, yes,
now
those are all
these would
typically
be,
covered.
that's wonderful. So these would be plans that cost approximately how much per month in a case like that, maybe?
If you want everything covered under your plan, I would say around the $50 to $60 range
This has
per
been
month.
so helpful. Do you know that the time has flown by?
Absolutely.
We have
It's gone
about
very fast.
Very fast. We only have about 2 minutes left to share. Would you speak about that famous donut hole that happens to, because people are worried about their parents that are entering that stage, and what's it involve? How much money and what happens?
Absolutely. Let's talk about Part D for 1 second. There is a donut hole that's included on Medicare prescription drug plans, and typically what happens is you have a certain amount of costs that you need to reach before you hit that donut hole. Then once you hit that magical number, what happens is your prescription drugs are not covered as much as they would have been before that donut hole. Now the donut hole typically lasts not so long for people who are definitely taking a lot of prescription medications. And once you're through the donut hole, your costs come down a lot.
So that this donut hole represents that they've done what? They've spent how much? Or
They've spent over $2,900 on their plan, on their prescription drug plan. And then once they're through that donut hole, then their costs drop dramatically.
the donut hole being that period of having spent or not spent?
Basically what would happen is in the donut hole, the Medicare prescription drug plan, instead of covering everything at a copay, would give you discounts on your prescription drugs instead. Then once you get through that donut hole, then your costs drop. You would either pay 5% of the prescription drug or the copay, whichever is greater.
Wow, that must become very onerous for people who, again, are on fixed income or low income.
It can become a burden at to some individuals.
Now, the open period for Medicare starts when and ends when?
The open enrollment starts October 15th, which is next week, and ends December 7th.
Next week at the time of this filming. So thank you, Neal, so much. This has been so helpful.
You're welcome.
Guests, viewers, I hope that you've learned a lot. I've certainly learned a lot, and I hope you come on again and speak to us about insurance matters.
Absolutely, anytime.
And I want to let you know that we're having an intermission now, and shortly after this, we'll be bringing in our second guest, Lisa Sarnicola. And I want you to know that we're on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock, and I hope that you'll watch us again. Thank you so much, viewers. Bye now. Thank you, Neal.
Thank you for having me.
Hello again, and thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed the show. And if you have any thoughts or concerns or ideas for a show or questions, please contact us. Our information is below. And remember, we want to know what's on your heart.